Good morning, everybody. Mass immigration is out of control. It has been out of control for 25 years, something like that, but it's even more out of control today. And whether it's been Blair, Brown, Cameron, May, Johnson, they haven't done anything about it. In fact, they've actively encouraged it. The only difference is that between Tories and Labour is that Labour are completely open that they wanted it. The Tories pretend they don't want it, but they made it even worse than Labour has done. So Cameron came in as Prime Minister in 2010, and he promised that he would get net immigration down to the tens of thousands, which it was before Blair's time pre-1997. But it went the opposite way. It went up to over 300,000 net a year immigration. And that's just the people we know about. That doesn't include people coming into the country illegally on the back of a lorry, for example. But what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is something new with the start of the dinghy crisis across the Channel. And that is specifically something that's out of control at the moment. So in 2020, there were about 8,400 people come over illegally on dinghies from France, a safe country, and most of them claimed asylum. Now, I would say that's a spurious asylum claim, because you're supposed to claim asylum if you're fleeing for your life in the first safe country you come to. So if you're fleeing from Syria, most people would claim asylum in Turkey or Lebanon or Jordan or Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia don't seem to want to take a single person. So, I don't know what's going on there. Rather than traveling through Turkey and Greece and Serbia and Hungary and Austria and Germany and France, and then getting on a dinghy and coming to the UK and claiming asylum here. That's not what people normally do when they're fleeing for their lives and claiming asylum in the first safe country they come to. So that was 2020, about 8,400 people. Last year, 2021, we had over 28,000 people turning up on a dinghy, escorted into Dover, mostly by the UK Border Force that is supposed to be protecting our borders, not taxiing and ferrying people in who are most likely to be making spurious claims to stay in the country. And everybody's seen this and they're saying, what on earth is going on? And of course, you've got the fake conservatives beating their breasts about how terrible this is and how they're going to have a meeting with someone in France to talk about having another meeting to discuss a framework to set up a plan, to have another meeting to perhaps talk about putting a policeman on a beach somewhere in Normandy, which isn't going to do a blind bit of, it's not going to make a blind bit of difference to the situation. 3 times as many people came across the Channel in 2021 as 2020, and this year, 2022, the numbers are looking on course to be even higher. So we've already had over 3,500 people come across the Channel, mostly escorted on the 3 Border Force vessels and others, sometimes by the RNLI as well. And this is just March, So last year, the time where we got 3,500 come over at the end of March, it wasn't until sometime around the end of May that we had that number of people come in 2021. So it's looking like about twice as many people. The rate is twice as high this year as it was last year. So if that happens, we're on course for about 60,000 people coming across the Channel this year. When are they going to do something about it? Because, I've got nothing against any particular person. I mean, if I was in the situation there, I'd probably do the same. I'd probably go, oh, if I get to Britain, I'm going to get a house and I'm going to get money. I'm going to get benefits. I'll be able to work and get a job and I can bring my family over. It's all lovely. That's great. I don't blame the people coming over because our ridiculously stupid governments are throwing money at people who are coming into the country on spurious grounds and mostly illegally, which is just insane. to be honest. It's absolutely insane. I mean, you don't get any other country doing that. Well, Germany's doing it and so on, because they're a bit insane as well at the moment. It seems to have lost their way completely. But you wouldn't find Saudi Arabia isn't doing that. You know, they're not saying, oh, come to our country, we're going to give you a house and benefits. And so nobody goes to Saudi Arabia. Mexico, Argentina, Thailand, Japan, South Korea, none of these countries are saying we're going to give you benefits and a house if you come to our country. Quite the opposite. Australia as well, quite the opposite. They're saying if you try to come to Australia illegally and you come through another safe country, you will have no entry. And we're going to process you offshore until we can return you to your home country. So Australia doesn't have a problem with illegal immigration across the seas to Australia from other places. So obviously the United States has gone that way as well with the Biden regime, which seems to want to let in way more illegal migrants than we do in the UK. Now, look, I'm not against immigration per se, but it's got to be legal. It's got to be targeted. It's got to be purposeful. So if someone is coming to work in this country, it should be for a job where there is no British person available to do the job. And that doesn't mean that we have the excuse of not training our own British people to do the jobs that need to be done, because that's something else that's been neglected for 25 years or more. So we are not training enough doctors and nurses and carpenters and builders and plumbers and electricians and gas fitters to do the jobs that need to be done in this country, which then gives the people in the regimes that we've had the excuse that we need to continue to bring people into the country who have got skills, because they deliberately have not trained up enough people in this country to have the skills that we need, like we used to do in the past, where we had universities focusing on proper academic courses. We had polytechnics training people in high-level technical skills, and we had apprenticeships to train people who weren't suited to go to a polytechnic or a university, who could learn a trade, learn a job, start working at 16, and be, fully qualified by the time they're 18 or 19, and make a living for themselves. That's all been broken down and washed away. I mean, this is the whole Build Back Better agenda, which is not about building back. It's about destroying everything and then building back a world where nobody knows how to do anything, nobody owns anything, and Klaus Schwab and his acolytes will be very, very happy, but nobody else will be particularly happy, but because we'll all be living in impoverished tyranny. So that's a bit of a wider issue, though. I was just talking about immigration, but there we go. It's funny doing this. You just get onto tangents and everything all links together, But so the population of the UK is out of control as well, and I don't believe the figures that we're being told to. Look, where in 1997 the population was about 59 million. Now officially it's 68 million, but that doesn't include all the people who aren't on the figures. And we know that they're lying about that is a massive underestimate. When we left the EU, there was a scheme that's called the Settled Status Scheme for EU citizens living in the country to claim permanent residency. And the government said there were 3 million people, 3 million EU citizens living in the UK who would claim this settled status that they could have. And how many claimed it? It wasn't 3 million, it was 5 million. So there's 2 million people who were here legally from the EU under the laws they put in. I don't particularly agree with the laws they put in, but that's the case. 2 million extra EU citizens in the country that they didn't know about. But have they been added to the total population figures that we get from the government? No. They're still pretending that there's only 68 million. When you add that 2 million on, that would be 70 million at least. And that does not include the people who are here illegally. Not the ones that we can see coming across the channel, but the ones who arrive early in the morning on a flight from Moldova, or come across on the back of a lorry, like those poor Vietnamese souls that died from asphyxiation when they were found in Tilbury. I think it's 37 Vietnamese just coming across illegally, but they died, and that was just one container ship. How many more come in that we don't know about at all? Probably hundreds every month. We just don't know. So the total population, I would not be surprised if the total population of the UK was actually over 75 million. You're not going to get the truth from government statistics and so on and the mainstream media, but where you could really find out what the population really is, who would really know, supermarkets would know, because they provide food, obviously, so they know how much food we need. And it's very interesting. There was an article written in 2007. You can look it up if it's quite obscured now. It's quite difficult to find, but there was an estimate by supermarkets that was 15 years ago, estimating that the population was 77 million based on the amount of food that they sold to people and the increase in the amount of food that was needed. So that's what they were saying. It's very difficult to find now, and of course everybody's, oh no, that's not true, that can't be true. Government statistics are true. Yeah, well, if you believe that, you're going to believe that pigs are going to fly over your house tonight. Who else would know? As a very intelligent researcher, when I was in working in City Hall, pointed out to me, water companies would know, because they would know how much water we use, how much extra water is used, how much extra wastewater is taken from our house. Try to get the figures from them about the volume and the quantity of water they use. It's again trying to get blood out of a stone, trying to get that information to actually see the water usage, because that would prove the increase in the population. And who else would know would be energy companies, because they would know how much energy we need and use from a year to year basis and be able to tell us. So, the point is population's out of control, immigration's out of control, and we've got local elections coming up. And one of the main issues that people are really concerned about all over the place is housing and the cost of housing. There isn't enough housing for everybody in the country, and that therefore the cost of housing, the cost of rents, the cost of mortgages are just going up through the roof. I mean, part of that is because of the gross financial irresponsibility of the government over the last 2 years with the whole lockdown situation and their response to that. They've wrecked the economy. But part of it also is that there's a huge supply for housing, and there's a huge demand for housing. There's just not enough supply. So when you increase the demand for housing by 10 million people or 20 million people, whatever the actual figure is, and you only build new houses for something like 5 million people over the last 20 years, you're going to have a supply crunch. There's just not enough supply for the people who are here. So, one of the things that I don't think any other party is going to be honest about is that if you want to solve the housing crisis, it is inextricably linked to mass immigration. You're not going to end the supply side crunch, the massive demand for housing, if you're going to continue to have mass immigration and bring in hundreds of thousands of extra people every year to the country and then not build enough houses for them. I'm not for building many more houses and homes anyway, because we are full as an island. This is a densely populated island, and we simply cannot accommodate many more people. I mean, England on its own is more densely populated than India. That's a fact. England is more densely populated than India. And nevertheless, the government is pushing ahead with trying to build houses everywhere over, all the green land around all our towns and villages. It's all over the country. And it's a right mess, and it's ruining our countryside. It's ruining our towns and our cities and our villages, and changing the nature of the country forever. It doesn't have to be this way. We've got to get a control on immigration so that then we can get the housing market and supply and demand back into balance. And so we can actually go on living as a nation, which actually has, some kind of semblance of social norms and as they were before. Otherwise, it's just all going to sort of descend into a big, mess of rampant development everywhere, and it's not going to be a very pleasant place to live. Some places aren't very pleasant at the moment, and it's a crying shame that these people have just got back into power again and again and again. But look, as I always say, I've set up the Heritage Party to challenge that, to challenge mass immigration, to bring some common sense back into every area, whether it's housing, education, transport, environment, energy, and so on. So have a look at us. Please come and join us. I'll put a link down below, heritageparty.org. Have a look at us, join us, come and stand as a candidate for us, and please do subscribe to my channel as well, because that helps me too. God bless you all.